I can't believe that. Landscape photography is so fun and so frustrating all at the same time. After the collaboration I did with Paul G. Johnson the other week, someone, eagle-eyed, noticed that I was using the 17 to 40mm Canon lens, and they asked me why I'm using that lens as if it's not a very good lens. They're asking me why I'm not using the 16 to 35 f4, claiming it was sharper, better, newer lens. It just got me thinking, is it? I don't know. Does the lens matter? Does the glass you use matter? So not being one to turn down a challenge, I've gone ahead and I have bought the 16 to 35mm, partly to prove to myself whether or not it's worth it and to help you out as well. So what I want to decide today is this 16 to 35mm newer lens better than this older lens? And if so, how much, and is it worth it? So that's what I'm going to do here today in the absolutely stunningly beautiful Yorkshire Dales. Also, today's episode is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a website, a domain name, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. So we're still doing some landscape photography today, and I am set up for my first shot of the day. And the way I'm going to do it is by, like I have here, getting the camera set up on the tripod and then shoot it with one lens. Don't change any settings or position or anything else. Switch the lenses and then take it with the second shot. So for the first shot, my composition is pretty much what I've got behind me. This is Ribblehead Viaduct. I've got this absolutely stunning limestone pavement down here, and just the natural lines just lead you into the viaduct, and you've got the mountain over there which is currently residing in the sunlight. For this shot though, what I want is to have some of that sunlight that's currently on the mountains over there. I want that to be striking this pavement because it just lights it up and creates a much more interesting shot. Without that, the shot isn't going to work as well. I'll still be able to get something to do the test, but I really want the light to hit it. At the moment, we've got the bank of cloud behind me. I think it is about to clear. It's definitely forecast to towards the end of the day, so it should be quite exciting. The reason I've come here, because for this test, I wanted to have some really strong foreground interest to really put the lens to the test across the frame, from the front edge and the corners, and then to the background as well. So this shot is going to do that for me. I think I'm then going to look around and try and find a second shot. So we've got two shots to compare, so we know one of them wasn't a fluke. Yeah, I just think this is going to be a really nice shot. The reason I've got the camera in quite a precarious position on these rocks here is because I've gone really, really wide to fill that foreground with these rocks. I'm at 16mm on this one. Actually, I've gone into about 17, so it's a fair test because I want 17mm for both shots. And it's filling the foreground with these rocks and they're dominating the frame. And then that just leads you up really nicely to the bridge and then to the sky above it, which has some quite interesting clouds in it as it starts to warm up towards the end of the evening. Settings wise, I'm at f16 because I'm really close to these rocks. I want to keep them in focus as much as I possibly can. I'm not going to focus stack or anything like that because it's going to make this shot much more complicated. I want it to be straightforward. There's no filters on the front, so I can just switch the lenses out really easily without affecting anything other than the change of lens. So I'm trying to make the test as accurate as I possibly can. So I think we're there now for that first shot. It's just a case of climbing up onto here and pretty much just waiting for those clouds to clear so we can grab this shot. I can't believe that. Landscape photography is so fun and so frustrating all at the same time. The cloud was there and it eventually cleared just as the sun started going down behind Whernside Mountain over there, and just unbelievable. I've been here for a while waiting for it, and then just as it happened, I had about 10 to 20 seconds to capture the shot. I think I got a bit of light on the rocks with both lenses, but it was frantic, and it's now spoiled my second shot because I now don't have any light on the pavement here. But the things I'm looking for in this test and the qualities I look for in a good lens are sharpness. Firstly, is the lens sharp? Secondly, I want to know, especially at these wide angles that we're dealing with today, what level of distortion do we get? Then I'm looking at things like chromatic aberration and lens flare. The 17 to 40mm lens has always done me right, so I'm very happy with that lens. So I really am looking to see a good improvement with this 16 to 35. So I'm set up for the second shot now, and without the light on these rocks, it's nowhere near going to be as good, but it still should be. I'm really happy with the composition. It's still going to be good, and it's still going to make this test very, very valid. Very frustrating though that I don't have the light. It's the summer solstice today, longest day of the year, and the light has dipped behind that mountain a lot sooner than it does in the winter, because the sun sort of sets over there in the winter and you get it a lot longer, so a bit disappointing, but there we go. Anyway, for this shot, the sandstone pavement, it's a bit more solid here, and these veins of rock are just fantastic. I've looked all around to find the veins of rock that lead you towards the mountain in the background there, which is still bathed in that absolutely remarkable, beautiful summer solstice afternoon sun. Very simply, I've gone to about 32mm on this one, a bit further in to test it at different focal lengths, but I'm still, similar to the last shot, filling the foreground with this rock, and then that just leads you up towards Ingleborough in the background there. So that's what I'm going for. Settings wise, I'm at f16 again because the limestone pavement is very close. I am at a shutter speed of 1/8 of a second. I'm just trying to keep this reedy grass out of the shot, because at 1/8 of a second that would show some movement, so I've zoomed in a little bit as well to get rid of that. ISO 100, and that's it. Right, let's swap the lenses and see what the 17 to 40 can do. So an absolutely brilliant evening of landscape photography there. It was very exciting. You spend all the time setting up and waiting, and then it happens in such a minute amount of time. And it was fun though. Anyway, I've got two good compositions in the bag. I've tested both compositions with both lenses, so I'm excited to find out which one's going to be best. I'm not even sure which one I want to win. The 16 to 35, I'd like to think lenses can keep getting better. I've spent about £700 on that lens. The 17 to 40 you can now pick up for about £200 second hand. That's done me well for years, so I kind of want that one to win, because then I can just send the 16 to 35 back and just be happy with what I already had. So either way, it's exciting. I love mucking around with the gear like this, and I hope you do too. So late night last night, I'm back in the office today. I've put those pictures into Lightroom, edited them exactly the same for both of these lenses, so we can see which one of these two is going to be the best. Let's get into the computer and have a look. Okay, so I've got the images here in Lightroom. I've got the two compositions with the two lenses. The green one is from the 16 to 35. The blue one is from the 17 to 40. So let's have a look at the first image to start off with. We can see it's a pretty decent image, and that light did eventually come around. Not wholly though. You can see here in this area here, there is a cloud which is kind of keeping all the light off the viaduct, which is what I would have really wanted to make this a top-notch shot. The light on the rocks is really nice, but if we spin over to the 17 to 40 picture, you can see that light was so fleeting. So if we go back to the 16 to 35 picture, let's just zoom in down in on this corner and have a look at the distortion. Now, distortion is pretty well handled with this lens, I've got to say. I'm quite impressed. It's nice and sharp as well. If we spin over to the 17 to 40, you can see that distortion is a little bit worse. You can see it stretches, this rock here stretches out a lot more than this one does here. So you can see distortion is a little bit better on the 16 to 35. One of the big differences that I have noticed with this picture is how the 16 to 35mm handles chromatic aberration much better than the 17 to 40. So 16 to 35 here, barely any chromatic aberration whatsoever, which is nice, and there's no correction done in Lightroom either. If we spin over to the 17 to 40, you can see this chromatic aberration appears, especially this green stuff around the edge of this rock here. Spin back to the 16 to 35 and that is gone. So that's quite a nice upgrade to the 16 to 35, which I'm really pleased with. Let's have a look at the next picture, which is a bit more of a straight up comparison. So that is the 16 to 35 millimeter. That is the 17 to 40, and there is just barely any difference. The processing I've done on these pictures is exactly the same. I've just done it on one and then copied it across to the other. With this picture, the light was the same as well. So it's a really good comparison. And you can see the first one, the 16 to 35, is slightly more contrasty, I think. Camera setting's exactly the same, and it's just a little bit more contrasty, which I think is quite nice. It's also got a slightly warmer tone to it. White balance is the same for both, but again, we're really talking small things here. Let's get in close onto these rocks to have another look at the sharpness. It's the rocks I'm really looking at because they're completely stationary. It's nice and sharp with the 16 to 35. Let's spin over to the 16 to 40, and really, I'm in pretty close there. I can't really see any difference whatsoever. I almost forgot to mention that I printed the second shot out with both lenses. I have the prints here. That is with the 16 to 35. That's with the 17 to 40. The differences are probably even less in the print because prints can be very forgiving anyway, and these two look very, very similar. Again, I think the 16 to 35 is very, very slightly better. It's got slightly more contrast in again. It's got that slightly warmer tone comes through in the print, so interesting to see those results. So overall, which one is best? Almost certainly the 16 to 35 millimeter lens is a better lens, but it's so marginal. The build quality is the same, the filter thread size is the same, the sharpness is pretty much the same. You're getting better chromatic aberration control on the 16 to 35, better distortion control as well, which is good. Focusing seemed to be identical on both of them as well, and it's just so marginal. 600 to 700 pounds versus about 300 pounds second hand, so it's really just down to you to decide whether the upgrade is worth it. I think I'm going to keep the 16 to 35. It is a slight upgrade, plus it has the image stabilization. Image stabilization is important to me, not in stills, but I use it a lot for video, so that's the reason I'm going to hang on to that. So we'll have one final look at those images in a minute, but like I said at the start, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. So if you need a website, go over to squarespace.com and you can start a free trial today, and then if you go to squarespace.com/firstman, you can get 10% off your first purchase. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you on another one very, very soon. I'm Adam, this is First Man Photography, out.